Hey, this is Dr. Kelly Cagle, and for season 3, we're doing things a little differently because we know that a healthy and happy dad and mom starts with a healthy and happy husband and wife. So I decided to bring along my husband, Josh, as co host so we could share some real life stuff of the ways that we learn how to fight to make our marriage thrive. You are listening to season 3 of the Parenting IQ podcast, Learning to Fight. Welcome to the Parenting IQ podcast, season 3, where I've got my co-host with me, Josh Cagle. Welcome, babe.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're super excited because for season 3, as I was praying and planning for this, I was talking to Josh and I said, babe, what's crazy is that we got married really young, first of all, and you're going to hear some of our story here in a minute. But the fact is that in a marriage, there's a lot of fights, right? You fight very often about a whole lot of different things. And then I started doing some research, and this is before we even did research that we found out some of the top reasons for divorce that we're also going to discuss include argument. And so we said, you know what? This is a great area to talk about. Not that we've got to figure it out, right?
Right.
We fight often. We do not have this figured out. But I do know that early on, it took us digging deep and figuring out, Lord, we are on the same team. And so we have to figure out a way to fight, right? Because it's going to happen. And so we want to welcome you to season 3, where that's what we're going to be talking about, learning to fight. I also want to remind you to subscribe to the Parenting IQ podcast. We're so happy you're here. Wherever you're listening, whether on Apple, Spotify, or Google Podcasts, make sure you subscribe and also share about it with your friends because as a good friend, it takes a village, right? You stand in the gap for one another and you help each other out. So share the episode with a friend. And then one final reminder, if you go to drkellycagle.com, you can find today's show notes, but you can also find a whole lot of resources that help you raise lifelong learners, kids that are confident and also know how to learn and have a love for learning. So you can find a whole bunch of resources and today's show notes at drkellycagle.com. We really appreciate your support of this ministry because it really is our hearts. Josh is right here and he's looking at me and he's just nodding because he knows that my heart has been, and I cry over this often, that all we want is transformation of homes, and not by the power of our words, but through the power of the cross. And so we are here providing you resources and information to partner with you in that transformation. So as we get going today, we're going to start with some divorce statistics. So Josh knows, and sometimes he even gets tired of me talking about small research that I conduct all the time. But I started looking up the divorce statistics in 2023. And you're not going to believe this because whenever I first shared them with Josh, you were blown away, right? So the first reason is lack of commitment. So 75% of marriages that end in 2023 were reported that they ended because of a lack of commitment. And when I share with people, they're like, well, what do you mean by lack of commitment? And it is whenever you just don't decide to fight on the same team, as far as you're not as committed and you don't work towards the same goal that you have. So that's lack of commitment. The second reason, do you remember what it was?
Dang, I didn't know I was testing.
We just went over this a while ago and he understood this one. He said it was infidelity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So 60% of marriages that end in 2023 was because of cheating in the relationship. It didn't say, it wasn't broken down whether it was the husband or the wife, but reason number 2 was infidelity. Right behind that reason, y'all, this is crazy. This blew your mind away, babe. Reason number 2 at 58% is too much conflict or arguing. And as I mentioned, we had already talked about this. Actually, for years, we've talked about fighting, right? And whenever
For years, we've been fighting.
Yeah, well, we've been married for how long?
I don't know.
Oh, whatever.
I'm joking. 17.
So we've been married for 17 years, dating for
19. I
19.
didn't know I was testing.
Okay. You're so far you've got
Okay.
a B plus.
All right.
But really it's this whole idea of um it's an issue. It's an issue. And every time we've gone to what are they? Wedding showers, right? That we're supposed to write the advice for new couples
Mhm.
for probably the past 10 years.
Mhm.
That's what we've written
Yeah,
down.
learn how to fight.
Learn how to fight. For about 10 years, that is the one advice that together, right? We decided, hey, that's really important. And it's made a big difference in our marriage once we learned how to fight.
Well, I think what it is that we've recognized that we do fight,
Hmm.
and we want people to understand we don't have a perfect marriage,
Hmm.
and we want people to understand that even these three things that you're talking about with the commitment, you know even fighting, I mean that could be tied up in the commitment issues. Hey, how do we fight? Why do we fight? How do we resolve things? That's what I think our hearts are always talking about whenever we're sharing that with people.
Yeah.
And so, whenever we're talking about, hey, this podcast, when we think about families, marriages, our kids, there's a lot of arguing,
Hmm.
bickering, challenges that can happen, and fighting is something that people, I think, sweep under the rug,
Yeah.
uh, because they're afraid of what people are going to think about them, or the image that might
Yeah.
might take place. So it's a big deal, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, and I think that there's such a stigma too with fighting that as a maybe you guys are newlyweds or started dating and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm already fighting with my boyfriend or my new husband. We're supposed to be so in love and are all gooey and all this." And then you fight and you're like, "Wait, maybe we aren't meant to be."
Hmm.
Right? But in reality, you are two different people that carry baggage and wounds and childhood crap, right? There's so much life that happened before you got together. Whether you are 15 when you got together, in our case, I was 17 and you were 19 when we
Hmm.
started dating, right? Got married, got together super young. But even then, we still had crap that we brought to our relationship.
Well, and I just remember when we got married, we were always told that the first year's so tough.
Yeah.
And we went through that first year, and it actually seemed like a breeze.
Yeah.
We're like, that gum, we got marriage down. We
Yeah.
figured
We're
this
like, we
out. And
got
then
this.
and then year two, it was like, oh my goodness,
Hmm.
we couldn't stand each other.
Yeah.
We were getting into all kinds of fights about all
Hmm.
kinds of things, big and small.
Yeah.
And it was in those moments that we were sitting down at a we
We
were
were
at
at
a
Pastor
church.
Brian's church.
Yeah, but I don't remember what that was all about, but we were there,
Hmm.
and at the end of the day, there was a guy that said something about fighting.
Hmm.
You need you're gonna have to fight, or people fight, whatever that he was talking about. And in those moments, it was like, we started realizing, oh no, it wasn't that. It was focused on the family. I think it was what it
It was that thing at
was.
my parents' church, wasn't it?
Mhm, mhm. And it just really spoke to us, and we started realizing, wow, it's okay. But we got some problems.
Hmm.
We need to try to flesh this out, and how are we gonna do this?
Yeah. And to go along with that, there was that moment that hit us that we said, okay, well, fighting, we're going to go through this. We're going to learn. And actually, I don't know, you don't probably don't remember this, but that was on our 1 year, no, sorry, 1 month anniversary that we were married, that we went to that marriage thing.
Oh, really?
It was. But now, at Pastor Brian's church, what the instance I was talking about is he's the one that introduced the idea of taking breaks, which we're going to introduce here
Oh,
in a
okay.
minute, right?
That's what
And
it
so it
was.
was a combination of two pivotal moments in our lives, both in church,
Mhm.
right? One was a marriage thing, and one was just a sermon, was just a Sunday sermon where we learned that information and we said, okay, well, we have to recognize what kind of people we are in regards to fighting. And I think it takes, okay, so like you are a type A personality, right? I
Sure.
say that both of us are type A. And so I say you are A plus and I'm A minus because we are both strong willed. We are both driven. We are both go getters as far as like when, tasks or whatever it is that we've got going. We're both like trucks, we kind of have no chill. I have a lot of energy, both of us.
And we're both always right.
And right. Well, but then your mom gave us that coffee
Oh,
mug
no.
for our wedding anniversary, or no, for our wedding shower.
Christmas or whatever.
Chris, yeah. And Josh opens his coffee mug and it said what?
It said Mr. Right.
And then I
I
opened
was
mine
so excited, and she set me up.
and mine said what?
This is always right.
Always right.
Yeah.
Yes, she had my back all along. But right, we are both always right. And so in that strong-willedness that we both have, learning what kind of fighter we are made a big difference. So we are going to unpack that a little bit,
Mhm.
right? The three things that you and I have kind of been working on daily, just about for the last, I would say, 18 years of our marriage, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
That we kind of have been working on, not to perfect, but to practice on a daily basis. Because as we were even talking about this episode, you were like, we're fighting right now.
Mhm.
As right?
Yeah.
And we do often because I work from home with the kiddos, noises all the time. I also homeschool now, right? You are outside of the home working, running big things. And then it's like we come together at the end of the day and I'm very drained. You are still on a high because you've been dealing with things all day, right? People, things all day. We come together and then we have to talk, unpack, and then sometimes it's that emotion of the day clashes into our home,
Mhm.
right? Into our day to day. So the first thing that we together decided 18 years ago is, first of all, is choose your battles wisely,
Mhm.
right? And can you talk a little bit about what we meant by choosing our
Well,
battles wisely?
I think first, whenever you think of all these things that we're trying to talk about, it's out of the failures. It's out
Yeah.
of the things that maybe we have to circle back on, because many times we find ourselves in a battle and then we're like, "Oh no. Well, what have we done, or how do we get out of this, or how do we get back to center?" And so I think when we talk about choosing our battles wisely, I think what we're saying is what is important.
Hmm.
There's a difference between bickering over, I want the lights on or I want the lights off,
Yeah.
versus,
Lit up, lit down.
yeah, versus true issues at hand of
Hmm.
how are we disciplining our children.
Yeah.
How are we going to solve this particular problem as a family or individuals or whatever's going on, right? I always explain it like you have told me before, where you have a headache
Hmm.
and my mentality is to go get the Tylenol.
Yeah.
And you're like, "No, I don't have a headache like that. My headache hurts. I just want to sit down and talk." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "What? That makes
Yeah.
no sense to me. I just want to solve the problem.
Hmm.
I want to get past the issue so that we're on to the next thing." And
And
you're
all
like,
I'm wanting is for you to sit with me.
"Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah." And so I think trying to even understand the different type of battles.
Mhm.
And so when you talk about choosing them, we first got to understand, I mean, life is colorful, life is fluid, life has a lot of scenarios that play out. And sometimes one home is going to experience things different than the other, but our goal here is to try to just speak out in what matters most, right? Family matters. Your relationship with your spouse matters. How we see ourselves matter. I think we there's a lot to unpack in what we're going to
Mhm.
go through in this series
Mhm.
to even get to being able to choose our battles.
Mhm. I'm gonna give an example of, I think, just the silliest thing that we could ever fight about. I was thinking of some examples early on when we were that second year of marriage that we were talking about that was pretty heavy. And I remember that we weren't riding in the same car for some reason. You're probably not even gonna remember this. It was just that dumb. But we were riding in separate cars and I was following you and you took off like at a red light or something. That light turned as soon as you were going, the light turned yellow and I got caught behind
And you should have kept up.
and you went. And I was so mad that you left me behind. Like we were headed home. We were a couple of minutes away from the house and I'm pissed that you left me behind. The petty things, the
Hmm.
stuff that's definitely not a battle to fight about. Like I knew my way home. I had a phone. I could have found my way home if I was lost. But just looking back, that second year, we were really fighting about everything.
Yeah, it was everything.
Yeah.
And whether it was about and I think really a lot of it was centered around we didn't have a lot of rest. I mean, we were
Yeah.
working and going to school. There
Mhm.
was a lot of things like that going on, and also just the youth, the energy that
Yeah.
we had, and we didn't let anything slide.
Mhm.
We expected perfection in the
Mhm.
beginning of our marriage. I've heard it said before where you start when you're dating in things that you're putting on your best self in
Mhm.
front of that person. And so if you dated for a short period of time or maybe even a long period of time, there's certain things that maybe certain fronts, certain masks that you might be trying to put on
Mhm.
that unravel when you get married, when you're living together, when you're doing life together every
Mhm.
day,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. And so I think that that was one of the things that we decided, hey, is this really worth us sitting down and talking and hashing out? Or is it something as silly as you leaving me behind? That's definitely not anything to fight about. And even like with the honey-do list and all these other things, it's like, man, are they all worth fighting about? Or can you just take into account the fact that you had a busy week and this is not, the time to even ask about this because you need rest. As you said, we were tired, and I think another thing, I was actually listening to a podcast this week that was talking about how the introvert and extrovert, it was personality differences within the marriage. And that's one of the things that when you and I got married, we were just unaware, very unaware about ourselves, our
Mhm.
needs, our personalities, our likes, dislikes. We were just kind of two young kids in love. And we just got married, right? And we've done a lot of growing up together. And just a couple weeks ago, we were talking to some friends and they brought up the fact that they've been married for a little over 10 years. And they were saying how 10 years ago, he has gone from this is how I see him now. And he's more patient and more considerate and more whatever, a little more stress in these areas, but also so many other things. And then he switched and started talking about his wife and same thing, all the things that he had seen develop, the growth. And I've been thinking about that moment. You probably have too, about man, when we got married, you are for sure, even 2 years in, 5 years in, you should not be the same people.
Mhm.
You should not be the same people that you were when you first got married because you learn, not because you're changing for the other person. That's not what it's about. It's about adjusting. It's about recognizing, hey, you are tired right now. Like, I'll put your shoes up. No big deal. I'm not going to sit here and bicker about you leaving your shoes by the door. You're just not trying not to spread germs all over the house. You know what I mean? So being
Mhm.
considerate of one another, those are just shifts and changes that in a healthy way take place with time, right? So same
Right.
same thing with
Yeah, I agree.
learning to fight or picking your battle is just figuring each other out and adjusting and making those changes through experience by living together, as you said.
And
But
sometimes those battles, when you're choosing or when you're in that battle, a lot of times when we were young, it was the kind of that always right mentality. I gotta win, right? And
yeah.
so I know what I think, I know what
Hmm.
I want, I know what I was after, and I'm gonna win. And
Yeah.
so it was this competitiveness because we're competitive.
We both are.
We're
That's
very
all.
competitive, and so because of that, we found ourselves not even realizing, "Hey, we're really fighting about something silly," but I think it's just we're so competitive, we're just
Hmm.
wanting to win.
Hmm.
And so in that, you find yourself not even realizing, "Hey, all of a sudden, I've just been sucked in," and sometimes you don't even remember what started
Yeah,
the fight.
exactly. A lot of times we were like, wait, what are we fighting about? What was because in a lot of times too, you mentioned earlier about sweeping things under the rug.
Mhm.
I feel like whenever you just sometimes get caught up fighting, then you start bringing up all this old garbage from
Yeah.
previous, like a year ago, 5 years ago, and you're just like, whoa, 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 what, right? And you
Mhm.
get carried away talking about fighting, all this other stuff that it should have already been solved back
Mhm.
then,
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
true, very
And
true.
so once we started choosing that, choosing our battles, then we were more after resolution of that one topic versus the building and then the explosion, right? I felt like that really helped us get to, hey, we're going to solve resolution for everything that we choose to fight about, right? It was
Mhm.
never a, hey, we're going to go to bed, going to continue this later. No, first of all, the Bible says, don't go to bed on your anger, right? So that's one thing that we've also always done is stayed up to solve things. And the second thing that we've done is learn what kind of fighter we each are.
Yeah.
So we started choosing our battles. Then we started exploring what kind of fighter I am and what kind of fighter you are. And this we learned with Pastor Brian. That's the one that I wanted to revisit that we learned early on. You want to talk about
Yeah, I
that?
mean, I think what really started this and how we started coming up with that learn how to fight mentality, I started thinking a little further about, wait a minute, there's a lot of things go on. You think of UFC, you think of boxing. I mean, what goes on is, I mean, obviously those are professionals
Hmm.
and they do a lot of time, not just in training their bodies physically, but mentally. They're studying their opponent. They're coming up with tactics on what would make them stronger or faster, or looking at each other's weaknesses
Hmm.
of who they're going to fight. And
Hmm.
so there's a lot of strategy, a lot of effort that goes into this battle. And there's a saying from, I think it's Mike Tyson, that says you can have all these plans until you get punched in the mouth.
Hmm.
And so what he's basically saying is once something happens, then it's so easy to change your battle plan.
Hmm.
And I think what helped us so much in our marriage is I'm a solve it now kind of guy.
Hmm.
And what are you?
Man, I will go bang the dishes because I don't want to talk right now. And I want you to know that I'm pissed, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go away and get busy. I'm going to walk away and you're kind of chasing after me to get to solve it. That's what we did early
Mhm.
on. You would
Mhm.
come after me and I would just try to run away. And sometimes I'd go and even like slam the door because I don't want to talk. You remember our first house, the door, none of the doors would lock. And so I
Yeah.
would try to lock the door and you're coming right in. I'm like, dang it, I can't even lock the
Yeah.
door.
Yeah. I was like, "Don't you shut that door on me.
Yeah,
We're working this out right
right
now."
now. And
You
I'm like, no,
know, and
we're not. And then the
but
silence treatment and then all that. So that is what I would give you,
right.
which would only escalate your emotion, right?
Right.
And we were reacting versus responding to what the fight was about.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to I saw that silence as a weakness. I saw that, or you were running away and we weren't ever gonna solve it,
Mm-hmm.
or it was gonna compound if we didn't fix this now, or whatever maybe was going on in my mind at that time. It was just no, this isn't right. We gotta make this right.
Mm-hmm.
And I completely would intrude or violate, or honestly didn't even understand
Yeah.
you. So again, going back to the battle plan, when you are as a UFC fighter or something, you're studying that opponent.
Mm-hmm.
It made me realize I never even studied you
Yeah.
for a fight. I never even understood your line of thinking or your
Mm-hmm.
personality. I just know me,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we did. I fought for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It was definitely a selfish thing, but in not, we weren't even doing it intentionally. There was no intentionality to hurt one another behind it. It was just say, hey, I need this right now. So this is what we're going to do. And
And I can still go there. I mean, there's many times we don't wanna talk, for all these listeners and think, "Oh, we don't ever fight anymore," or these are the issues that we've resolved. I mean, it's easy to find ourselves still
mm-hmm.
back in these same moments, but what I do think that really has helped us was recognizing who you are,
Mm-hmm.
and that you want some time.
Yeah.
And so I think our strategy that we
Mm-hmm.
came up with is because I am that solve it guy. We started giving each other some time.
Yeah. So this goes into our third point. So we go from choosing your battles wisely, what kind of fighter you are. Are you solve it now? Are you a solve it in a minute
Hmm.
person? And then the third one is respect one another.
Yeah.
So keep going.
Well, I mean, when it does come to that, I think what we started seeing, or what I started recognizing is, hey, you needed this time to process. I feel like I could argue really quick off the cuff and still hold my own, and you needed this time to process. And I think what really helped me is in this moment where we committed to this time, what it allowed me, the peace that it gave me is that we're not pushing it under the rug.
Mhm.
We're not forgetting about it. We're
Mhm.
not gonna talk about it.
Mhm.
We're just gonna buy a moment in time, whether it was 5 minutes or 10
Yeah,
minutes or
so
20
so
minutes.
let's unpack that a little
Okay.
bit. So what we decided to do, it was I think Pastor Brian that gave us the strategy. I don't recall because this was many, many years
Yeah.
ago. It was if you are dealing with people that have similar fighting styles as us, right? A solvent out guy and a I need a break person.
Mhm.
Then it was you decide, agree. You both agree on a break time frame.
Mhm.
So sometimes if it were petty things, then it would just be like 5-minute break, just a 5-minute break for me to go and do what I want for a minute to breathe, and for you to just say, okay, I'm going to sit here, even though I'm ready to fight right now. You allow your emotions to calm down a little bit. You,
Mhm.
you go back to what are we really fighting about to start with, right? And then that 5 minutes, we both would set a timer.
Yeah.
It was that respect thing was an agreement that we said, you can count on me to come back in exactly 5 minutes,
Mhm.
not six,
Yeah.
5.
Yeah, initially it sounded kinda elementary and really silly, and what would happen is not that, "Oh, we're fighting, let's set this timer." We recognize, "Wait a minute." The battle started getting a little heated,
Mhm,
and it was in that moment that we started realizing, "Okay, we're treading water, or we're trying to drown each other, if you will, or pull each other down, that we need this moment."
mhm.
And so it could be that we were fighting for 15, 20 minutes before we even recognize
Yeah.
that this is what's going on over a topic,
Mhm,
of how I like the dishes to be clean,
mhm.
or whatever it was. And in those moments, once I'll never forget the first time we did this. You went upstairs,
Mhm.
and I don't know how long it might have been, 5 minutes or 10
We
minutes,
started
whatever it
small.
was.
We started small.
But we had a good fight going, and you went upstairs, and we gave ourselves that time, and you came down, and it was a moment of, I was ready for you when you were coming down them stairs. I heard you open that door, and I was going, and I walked over, and you were coming down. The first thing when our eyes locked was we started kinda smiling. We
Yeah.
had a little bit of a snicker on our face,
Yep.
and yeah, I mean, it was
Yeah.
awesome. It was
Yeah.
it was a neat moment, that just that little bitty effort that
Mhm.
that we tried to apply, and from there, it was some baby
Yeah.
steps, obviously.
And then we had some bigger arguments, and I don't even recall what they were about, but there were some break times that they were 30 minutes or
Mhm.
an hour or something that. And then you just kind of trusted each other. Just, wow, I just shared something really heavy with you, and you need more time to process this.
Mhm.
And you tell me this all the time, even now, sometimes, and you know this about me, but sometimes you're like, say something. And I'm like, I'm in here, and my mind is going and spinning. If I'm not saying anything, it does not mean that I'm not paying attention or that my mind isn't going. I'm thinking and thinking. I'm a thinker. I'm an introvert, first of all. People get so shocked when I tell them that. But I am an outgoing introvert, and you're an extrovert. You get very fueled and recharged by people. I do not. And no one is better, right? There's strengths to both.
Yeah, I think I'm better.
Okay, yeah, but Mrs. always
Oh,
right, so
okay.
it's fine. But you sometimes understanding, hey, wow, she's got her thoughts, and she needs her silence. I love silence, even though I hardly ever get it. So that respect one another, I think that third point, the respecting one another was one. We trusted that if I said, hey, I just need 5 minutes because I'm respecting you, knowing that you need to solve you are the solve it now guy. I am respecting you enough to say, I'm gonna just give me 5 minutes. And then you're trusting me to know that I'm gonna come back
Right.
down in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was this agreement, like almost a contract. We can sign this,
Well,
you
and every
know?
time we realized that we were violating these, right, that we weren't choosing our battles wisely,
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And eventually we weren't respecting each other.
Mhm.
Every time there's a story about a fight
Mm.
that wasn't going well. I want to let the listeners know that we have had some fun fights. Some stories are fun to talk about, right? I mean, I still think about one of the greatest fights when we
You're
were
gonna go there.
younger.
You're gonna
I
go there.
am. I'm going there. That I just think is so fun. Was again, just to help our listeners understand, we're competitive. And you said that you knew how to ski. We went on a ski trip
Yep.
and we were going, and you went with us with my
Okay, so
family.
let's clarify this a little
What
bit
are we
more, right? So
clarifying?
I'm from Brazil, right?
Okay.
A tropical country.
Okay.
At the time when we met, I'd only been in America for like 6 years.
Okay.
Okay. We went with my
Is
family.
this an
No, no,
excuse
no,
in
no.
your
This is a clarification.
competitiveness?
This is a
Okay. It's an
clarification.
excuse. Okay.
So I went skiing once, and to my defense,
Hmm.
I was a very proficient green slope skier, right? Green, whatever is it, slope,
Okay,
whatever they're called.
so now that you feel a little
Okay,
better,
I
let's
do.
get into this story. So when I hear that you tell me,
Why don't you tell them how long you've been skiing, what all you've done in your life?
I grew up skiing maybe twice in my life or something like that.
Whatever. You went every year.
But anyways, it would only take twice, babe, to beat you. But anyways, so what we were doing, yes, I had skied a lot growing up and whatnot, but it had been a while before I went back skiing this time, and so we were so
Muscle
excited.
memory.
So we went out there and got our skis, and we started on I think it might have been a green out
No,
of
no, no. It was
respect.
blue.
Was it a blue?
Yeah, it was a
And
blue.
so we went on a blue, and I thought, all things considered, you were doing okay.
Wow.
And so we were just like, okay. So we made it down. It took a little longer than what we'd hoped, but we made it down. And so obviously we were wanting to keep going,
Mm-hmm.
right? That adrenaline high
Uh-huh.
and stuff. And
With your
so
two brothers too.
with
So
my two brothers,
three Cagle boys
yeah,
and then
and then you.
Mrs. Cagle.
And so we were like, hey babe, can we go a little further? Can we go do a black? And you okayed this. I think I remember you okaying this.
I
Or
don't
maybe
remember
you
this,
just didn't
but
want to let us down. Maybe that's what it
maybe I
was.
didn't realize what a black was because I had never seen one.
Okay, so we went to this black. We went right to the edge, and it was at that point that I didn't know you that well, and you were afraid of heights.
Mm-hmm.
And so this black had a moment that really all it was it seemed like it was straight down.
Mm-hmm.
And so you freaked out.
Froze.
And I'm just like, babe, we're here. There's nowhere else to go. We have to make this down. Okay. So I'll help escort you down here, but you're going to have to do this. You just need to listen to me and do as I do. And so, I unbegrudgingly, but as this nice guy, this honoring, respectful person, I started, I wanted to go, way down the slope and all this and have fun. It was like our second one. We just got there, but I was patient, and I did this whole like wedge completely sideways and then turn. And I'm trying to share with you, hey, this is what you do, right? And so then you're starting, and I'm watching, and you're coming, and and the moment you're trying to make a turn, you pick up too much speed and you start going, you freak out, and
Freak
you're
out.
falling.
Yeah.
And so this happened about 3 times, right? And so, anyways, as you can imagine, my voice is getting louder and louder.
And as you
One,
can tell, he already has a deep voice.
one, I feel like I'm having to scream up the mountain, and I'm like, babe, no, this is not what you do. So, long story short, you're upset. I come over to you. I'm upset. Okay. And I'm coming over. I'm like, you're not listening to me. This is what you do. And next thing I know, what happens?
I had a piece of gum in my mouth, and then it was not in my mouth anymore. It was in my finger, and then it was in your
You
face.
threw it at me, and then you punched me in the face. You punched me in the face. It didn't hurt, by the way, guys.
Oh,
It didn't
yeah.
hurt.
Nah.
Okay. You know, but you punched me in the face. I didn't see it coming. So all these UFC boxing things that I was just talking about a minute ago, I didn't see anything coming. I didn't know I needed to keep my gloves
Then
up, right?
you just said, all right,
Uh-huh. I
later,
said,
Gator.
okay. So if this is how it's going to be, I left you down.
He left me at the very top of this black mountain, which then he just left.
Yeah,
And so
I was mad.
I said, you know what? There are alternative ways to go down this mountain because I'm terrified. I mean, I was just really scared. I took off my skis and I just went right in between them trees with snow all the way
Mhm.
up to my knees, just digging. I mean, I just marched down that mountain.
Yep.
So we're just sharing this with you guys for you to know that although we our fights have not been physical, that one was
Yeah, that
yeah,
was
yeah,
yeah.
that's a very one that's the one you would have shared too.
That yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, there's no physical, but that just goes along with the storyline of it was petty.
Yeah,
It was very petty.
yeah.
You know, you shouldn't have taken me to a black. I should have listened more, and so on and so forth.
Well, I think we weren't even married yet then. You went with us with my family, on that trip and
Mhm.
stuff at that time, but I'm just sharing with you that the whole respect that we're talking about
Yeah.
here, it is really something that I think grows. It
Yeah.
builds.
Yeah.
It's just like a marriage. It takes time. Well,
Mhm.
respect takes time,
Yeah.
right? And I think where you gain more respect for each other is when you do conquer fights
Yeah.
because you are committed,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
You're committed to win, for each
For
other.
each other.
You're committed to each other,
Yeah.
and I think that's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. So, those 3 things, you guys, choosing your battles wisely, figuring out what kind of fighter you are, and respecting one another will be the things that we kind of unpack, not really those 3 per se, but in an applicable way for the rest of the semester for season 3. That's what we're gonna be talking about in a whole bunch of different topics that we have researched. We've kind of unpacked some of the things that you and I have fought about
Mhm.
over the years
Right.
that we find common and as well that we've heard from our friends and also research shows that couples fight a lot about these things. So we kind of have a list together. Now I do want to say that if you want to submit your requests and comments for us to unpack anything that you personally struggle with, you're more than welcome to do that. If you head over to drkellycagle.com, you can also write us on Instagram at Dr. Kelly Cagle. We would love to hear from you guys on some of the things that you fight about that you would like us to unpack and give us some of your
Right.
our failures, right? Of these like fails moments that you want to hear about. But we do also want to encourage you to share this episode with a friend that you feel like could really take advantage and learn from and benefit from the information we share today. And we want to remind you right now that you are 2 different people that are on the same team.
Mhm.
So choose your
That's
battles
right.
wisely. Think about what kind of fighter you are and respect one another.